Is my ghosted ex-wife possibly tracking me down? A while ago, I had this big drama with my ex-wife that feels straight out of a movie. I shared my story online, but it kept disappearing, like someone was playing hide and seek with it. Despite that, I heard through the grapevine that my tale got picked up and shared again somewhere else. They wanted to make sure everyone got the full picture of what went down. Here's the backstory. My ex-wife and I hit a major rough patch because I caught her red-handed cheating on me with a guy she works with. How did I find out? Well, I turned into a bit of a detective and followed her one day. And yep, I saw everything with my own eyes. It was like a punch in the gut, you know. After that discovery, I tried to talk to her about it, not just once, but a few times. But it was like talking to a wall. No progress, no explanations, nothing. I was emotionally drained and just done with the whole mess, so I made a big decision. I was going to completely disappear from her life, ghost her style. Since our finances and stuff were all separate and we didn't own anything huge together, I could make my exit without leaving a trail of chaos behind. My grand exit plan. I packed up all my things and moved out of our shared apartment to a new place far from the city. I found this cool trailer for sale from a friend and decided it was the perfect spot for me to start over. It was just me, my trailer, and a whole lot of peace and quiet. I left behind just a note and my wedding ring for her. That was my way of saying I'm out. Life since then has been surprisingly awesome. I live simply but happily. My job allows me to work from anywhere as long as I have a reliable internet connection. Which, thankfully, I do. This lifestyle suits me because I can be in my little corner of the world or travel to wherever my work needs me, all without missing a beat. Initially, I was planning to get all my personal stuff sorted out and then look into getting a lawyer for the divorce. But guess what? My ex was one step ahead and filed for divorce first. Luckily, it was all pretty straightforward, no fighting over belongings or anything. We both just wanted to move on, I guess. But here's where things get interesting. Even though I thought this chapter of my life was closed, the fact that my original post kept getting removed and then suddenly reappeared elsewhere made me start wondering, could my ex-wife be trying to track me down? Has she been following my digital footprints across the internet trying to figure out where I vanished to? The thought has been nagging at me, making me curious about her motives. Is it just coincidence? Or is there more to the story of my ghosted ex-wife possibly on a mission to find me? Here's the problem. A bit ago, I randomly bumped into someone who knows both me and my ex-wife. Out of the blue, she starts spilling the beans about my ex. It turns out my ex was caught red-handed, having a secret romance at her workplace. The whole ordeal blew up big time, causing a lot of drama for her and the other guy involved. I was like, nope, don't need this drama, and I shut down that conversation fast. I've had my fair share of headaches because of her, and I wasn't in the mood to add any more to my plate. But that's not all. This friend also drops a bombshell that my ex is apparently hoping to get in touch with me. She wants to apologize, maybe even try to patch things up between us. I was skeptical right from the start. Despite her insistence, something didn't sit right with me. I made it crystal clear that I didn't want my ex to know anything about our run-in or even that I was still around. We agreed to keep it on the down low. The last thing I want is to reopen old wounds by getting back in touch, or even accidentally running into her. Fast forward to 3 days ago, and guess who I see? My ex, sitting all by herself in a cozy little coffee shop in a touristy spot, not too far from where I live. This place is a popular getaway spot, yet it's a good distance from her place. There's no way we just happened to be there at the same time by sheer coincidence. I almost walked in for a coffee, but then I noticed she was glued to her phone. Probably didn't even see me. Here's the kicker, I've changed a lot since we split. I've grown out a hefty beard and let my hair flow down to my shoulders. I figured there was no way she'd recognize me with this new rugged look. My gut reaction was to hightail it out of there as if I'd just seen a ghost. And man, did I make a quick exit. I thought I had done a pretty good job of keeping under the radar, but now I'm starting to second guess that. This brings me to the big question. Am I acting weird by wanting to bolt every time something reminds me of my ex? I've been mulling over the idea of talking to a professional, like a counselor, about this whole flight mode reaction I seem to have developed. Before this unexpected encounter, I was living the dream, enjoying my independence, and genuinely happy. Now, I'm thrown for a loop. A friend even cracked a joke, suggesting she must have some high-tech tracking device to find me. So what's the game plan here? Should I just brush off this whole saga and keep moving forward, hoping it all just fades away with time? Now for the updates. Update 1. Hey folks, I just wanted to drop in and share a bit of what's been going on with my ex-wife and me. Honestly, I've sat down to write this out like 5 times already, trying my best to make it clear and straightforward. If you remember from my last update, I mentioned how I was getting this vibe that my ex was on a mission to track me down, possibly hoping we might patch things up or something along those lines. So, here's a bit of backstory for context. After our split, I decided it was best for me to start fresh somewhere new. I ended up moving about 2 hours away from our old place, thinking it would give me some space and peace of mind. Imagine my surprise when last weekend, I see her at this coffee shop I've sort of made my new local hangout not far from where I live now. It was so out of the blue, and I couldn't help feeling that her being there wasn't just some random coincidence. The good news was I managed to slip out unnoticed. Now jump to this past weekend. I had to run back into town for some groceries, and while I was there, I thought, why not grab a coffee and knock out some work documents using the shop's free Wi-Fi, right? So there I was, finishing up my stuff, feeling pretty good about the day, when I step outside, heading towards my truck, and suddenly I hear someone yelling my name. Paul. I look over and my heart just stops. Across the street, there's Kathy, my ex, just standing there, waving at me like it's some kind of movie scene. It felt like my personal doomsday had just arrived. I froze, completely shocked. She didn't hesitate. She ran across the street towards me, all smiles, obviously expecting a warm hug or something. But I just couldn't. My body reacted before I could even think, and I found myself holding my hands up, palms out, signaling a no-go for the hug. The look on her face shifted instantly. She went from happy to really hurt in a second. Then she dropped the bomb. Paul, I've been looking for you, she said. I heard you moved out here and I just wanted to see you. Can we talk? I gotta tell you, in that moment, I felt like a deer caught in headlights, totally trapped. But deep down, I knew running wasn't an option this time. So with a heavy sigh, I agreed. Okay, I said, trying to sound more composed than I felt. Let's find a spot to sit down and we can chat for a bit. And that's where things stood. It was one of those moments where you're caught between wanting to escape and knowing you have to face what's in front of you. I was torn, guys, really torn. But I figured maybe it was time to at least hear her out, see what she had to say. So after we decided to sit down and talk, she suddenly asks if we can head to my place. I was like, no way, right off the bat. Instead, we found a bench outside a little shop at the end of the street and sat down there. She started the conversation by commenting on how different I look now, saying she really liked my new style. She mentioned my beard, my clothes, and kept going on about how I seemed to have gotten in better shape. It felt like she was laying it on thick, trying to butter me up or something. She was dressed in a way that I guess she thought would grab my attention, wearing these tiny white shorts, a tank top, and her hair in a ponytail just the way she knew I used to like. My internal alarm bells were ringing loud and clear. It was obvious she was trying to dial up the charm to 100. I had to take a deep breath and remind myself to stay cool, and really listen to what she was about to say. Then she took a deep dive into apologizing for her past mistakes, particularly about the affair she had. She told me how that whole mess had come back to bite her. After I left, her workplace found out about the affair and things got so awkward and tense that she ended up quitting her job. The guy she was involved with, who was engaged at the time, got into trouble at work and was even moved to a different department. He blamed her for all the trouble and in a twist of revenge, she spilled the beans to his fiancée, leading to their breakup. As she was telling me all this, she began to cry, really trying to pull on my heartstrings. I just sat there not really knowing what to say, kind of awkwardly looking around. After a moment, she wiped away her tears, looked me straight in the eye, and I felt like I had to ask what she was really after by coming to talk to me. She wanted to clear the air, saying she never meant for the affair to happen. She felt caught up in the workplace politics and the charm of her affair partner, who seemed to have a lot of influence at the company. She admitted she thought she could play the game too, using him while he was using her, but now realized how wrong she was. She wanted to get everything off her chest, especially after I had called her out for cheating. She told me that during that whole mess, she really couldn't stand herself. After work, she'd often drink, trying to numb the guilt that was eating her up inside. She felt totally foolish and super lonely, like her heart had just shattered into a million pieces when I left her. She ended things with the guy she was seeing on the side pretty much right after I walked out. She felt trapped, like she had no way to reach out or talk to me, so she thought she had to track me down in person to see if there was any chance of fixing what had been broken between us. She was fully aware that we were divorced and all, but she was holding on to this hope that maybe, just maybe, we could start from scratch. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was just staring at her in disbelief. Then, I let her have a piece of my mind. I'm going to sum up what I said, but it was along these lines. How could you even think for a second that you could just show up and erase all the pain and problems you caused? You expect me to just forgive and forget everything that tore our marriage apart. I made it crystal clear before. If you cheated, that was it. End of story. No second chances. You completely destroyed the trust and love we had. The moment you decided to cheat was the moment you threw our relationship in the trash. Do you really think I'm that naive? I actually followed you one night and saw you two sneaking into a hotel. Did you know that? I didn't realize until then that I had been raising my voice and people around us were starting to look. She broke down crying, really losing it, and grabbed my arm. I let her lean on me and cry for a bit before I gently pushed her away. Looking up at me through her tears, she said, "I deserve all of this, I know, but please, can we at least go to dinner or something? I don't want to just leave things like this. I want to talk more, lay everything out on the table. I need this time with you, time you didn't give me before. Please, Paul, I know you might not want to hear it, but I still love you so much." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. It was a lot to process. She was basically begging for a chance to make things right, or at least to have a proper conversation about everything that had happened. It was clear she was hoping for some kind of closure, or maybe even a new beginning. It was a heavy moment, filled with so much emotion and so many unresolved feelings. So, here's where things got even more emotional. My ex-wife, through her tears and struggling to catch her breath, told me something that hit me hard. She said, "I didn't realize how much I loved you until after you were gone and I was left all broken inside, and I know I broke you just as much. I can't forgive myself for what I've done, and honestly, I don't think I ever want to forgive myself, not until my last day." Watching her completely lose it, sobbing uncontrollably, I did the only thing that felt right in that moment. I pulled her into a hug. It felt like she needed some kind of comfort, and maybe, just maybe, this could help calm her down a bit. In that moment it dawned on me that I had indeed broken her heart just as she had shattered mine. We began to walk together and I found us a quiet path where things felt a bit more peaceful, a bit removed from the chaos of our emotions. As we walked, I was curious about how she managed to find me. I mean, did she hire a private detective or something? She actually laughed at that and said no, but she had thought about it. Turns out she ran into Stacy a couple of weeks back and asked her how things were going with me. Stacy, who wasn't supposed to say anything, ended up spilling the beans after Kathy pushed her for details. She told Kathy that she had seen me around town and knew I lived somewhere nearby. Kathy admitted she started visiting our town on her days off hoping to bump into me. She was actually blushing when she told me this, which was kind of funny in a way. I couldn't help but laugh a little, thinking about how Stacy really can't keep a secret. After all that, we did end up going to dinner. We found this cozy little place that had an outdoor patio, and we made a point of not drinking any alcohol. I didn't want there to be any chance of things getting too emotional, or for her to have an excuse to say she couldn't drive home because she had too much to drink. The conversation we had over dinner was surprisingly good. It felt like we were actually communicating for the first time in a long while. After dinner, I walked her to her car, and that's when she really started pressing me. She was insistent, telling me she hadn't been with anyone since we split and swore that I was the only one she ever wanted. But I had to be honest with her. I told her it was still way too soon for me to even think about getting back together or anything like that. The whole evening was a lot to process, and it was clear there were still a lot of feelings and unresolved issues between us. So let's dive a bit deeper into the whole saga with my ex. After we had this super intense and emotional conversation, she made it pretty clear that she was hoping to see me again. I was riding the fence on this one, not quite ready to dive back into any sort of relationship, friendship, or whatever this was turning into. I did, however, throw her a bone. I gave her my new email address. That's as far as I was willing to go. She was pushing for my phone number, but I shut that down fast. I just had this vision of my phone constantly buzzing with messages and calls from her, and I wasn't about to open that can of worms. She didn't take that rejection well and got all teary-eyed, which made the situation even more uncomfortable. She mentioned she'd be back in town the following weekend, dropping a pretty heavy hint that she'd like to meet up. I kept my cards close to my chest, not giving her a definite answer. She said she'd email me with all the specifics, where and when. Before she left, I decided to test the waters a bit. I asked her straight up if she would be able to forgive me if I had been the one stepping out on our marriage. She paused for a good while, probably weighing her words, and then she told me yes, she could forgive me, but it wouldn't be overnight. It would require some serious work on our part, like going to marriage counseling, having deep and honest conversations, maybe even making some sort of formal commitment to each other to work through the issues. I responded somewhat jokingly, saying maybe I could consider all that in 5 minutes 10 years. Surprisingly, she took me seriously and said she'd be willing to wait, no matter how long it took. Then, she did something that completely caught me off guard. She took my hands in hers, looked me straight in the eyes, and told me she'd always loved me and was willing to do anything to prove it. The intensity in her eyes, the earnestness in her voice, it was a lot to take in. It left me pretty shaken, not gonna lie. Despite her heartfelt declaration, I couldn't shake my reservations. The thought of getting back together seemed so far-fetched to me. Right now, I was feeling a bit more at peace with everything, but the idea of us even being friends with benefits was out of the question. Maybe just friends, but even then, I was filled with doubts. Could we ever make it work again? I wasn't sure, and I wasn't about to let anyone convince me I was making a mistake by even considering the possibility of a second chance. I'm not one to easily hand out forgiveness or forget the past. After leaving that emotional roller coaster behind, I needed to clear my head. I went for a long run, which always helps me sort through my thoughts. Then I kicked back with a few cold beers, which felt like the perfect way to wind down. In that moment I felt pretty good, kind of like I had found some semblance of inner peace. But the nagging question remained. Could I trust her not to mess everything up again if we gave it another shot? That was the million-dollar question. I had no answer, at least not yet. It was all still too fresh, too raw. But the one thing I had on my side was time. Time to think, time to heal, and time to figure out what I really wanted. That was my silver lining in all this mess. Update 2. Okay, it's been quite a ride, and I initially wanted to share the saga on Reddit to get some outside perspectives. But for whatever reason, every time I posted my story, the moderators decided it wasn't going to stay up. So here's the deal, just to get you fully in the loop. After a whole year of radio silence from my end, my ex-wife managed to track me down. She was on a mission, hoping against hope that we could patch things up, wipe the slate clean and maybe, just maybe, start over. It seems like a lot of people who caught wind of my story figured I'd be the guy who just caves in, forgives everything, and jumps right back into the deep end with her. Well, they're about to find out that's not how this story goes. Last week, I get this email from her, and we're not talking a quick note here. This was a full-on heartfelt essay where she laid everything on the line. She talked about how much she regretted the affair, how much she still loved me, and how she was holding on to this idea that we could spend a weekend together, talking things out, and potentially rekindling what we once had. But here's where it gets interesting. I've been living my best life since we split. Moving out to a more secluded spot was probably one of the best decisions I've made. It's given me peace, simplicity, and a whole lot of space to just be me. I've met some incredible people, made new friends, and even enjoyed the company of several women. With all this going on, diving back into the past is the last thing on my mind. I'm 32 years old now, and the way I see it, there's absolutely no rush to upend the life I've built for myself. I've laid out a path for my life, a sort of personal roadmap to self-determination, and I'm sticking to it. That roadmap doesn't include backtracking or revisiting what's already been done and dusted. So, in response to her email, I was straight up with her. I didn't just refuse to give her my new phone number. I made it abundantly clear that reconciliation wasn't on the table. No beating around the bush, just the honest truth. I laid it all out, explaining that while I wish her the best, my focus is on moving forward, not looking back. I've got plans, dreams, and a whole lot of life to live without reopening old wounds. It's about embracing the freedom I have now, the joy of new experiences, and the satisfaction of living life on my own terms. So to everyone who thought I'd just roll over and play the forgiveness game, think again. I'm committed to my journey, and while it's been a wild ride getting to this point, I'm excited about where I'm headed onward upward and with a clear view of the horizon. So after everything that happened between us, there's just no way I could trust her again. It's not just about the betrayal. It feels like she's become a stranger to me, but you know, I'm not heartless. I told her I wished her all the best, and hey, maybe there's a slim chance we could be friends down the line. That's a big maybe though. My sort of let's see what happens vibe definitely didn't make her happy, and her response was pretty revealing. She was super disappointed with my lukewarm reaction, but then she hit me with some news that really made me stop and think. She's moving away, like several states away, because she landed a new job. And here's where it gets interesting. She was secretly hoping I'd be up for moving with her. She knows my job doesn't tie me to any one place, so in her mind, moving together could be our chance to wipe the slate clean and start over in a totally new place. She's on a tight timeline too, and wanted to meet up before she leaves to really push this idea of us getting a fresh start. But here's where fate steps in. I'm scheduled to be out of town on a business trip for the next week, which means I won't even be around for her to try and convince me. So it looks like she's going to be out of my life for good. I'm expecting a few more attempts from her side, probably some emails trying to persuade me. but I figure eventually she'll realize it's time to close this chapter. She's got to move on, and let's face it, there's a chance she might end up in the same situation with someone else. Sharing this update is more than just getting it off my chest. It's about passing on a bit of what I've learned through all this. Life's too short to be bogged down by past mistakes or to let old flames dim your light. It's all about pushing forward, keeping your head up, and making sure you're living a life that's true to you. Cut loose any dead weight that's holding you back and give yourself permission to thrive. Empower yourself to step into the future with confidence, knowing you're making the best decisions for your happiness. So to everyone out there reading this, take it from me. Cherish your freedom, value your peace of mind, and don't rush into anything that doesn't feel right. Life's a journey, and it's all about growing, learning, and moving past the hurdles with your head held high. Here's to all of us finding our path, shaking off the past, and embracing the adventures that lie ahead. Remember, the only person who can define your happiness is you, so make every moment count and live your best life. Good luck, and here's to brighter days ahead for all of us.